He's not cheating on me. That stuff is ridiculous. And whenever he's out doing this gig work stuff, he'll answer the phone the first time I call. He will come home if I'm like, hey, I need you to come home. And he's back within whatever distance he's away from me. So there's none of this, like, there's just, whatever you guys are trolling, you're trolling there, because that's not going on here.
It all started with a video that was meant to clear the air and bring peace to a turbulent situation. But instead, it ended up confirming what many had already suspected. Something was deeply wrong between Drew and Stephanie. For weeks, a TikTok account called Drew's Sidepiece had been dropping explosive claims, screenshots of messages, suggestive photos, and even voice notes. Each post hinted that Drew, Stephanie's partner and the father of her children, had been unfaithful. Viewers were glued to their screens, waiting for the truth to finally come out. And then it happened. The video dropped. Drew and Stephanie appeared together, shoulder to shoulder, trying to protect unity. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. Drew did most of the talking in the beginning. He rambled about how he struggles with communication. He said he might be on the autism spectrum, though, notably, there was no actual diagnosis, and how this affects his ability to connect with others. He spoke about using gaming headsets not to ignore his family, but to manage sensory overload. Stephanie nodded along, jumping in to relate it to their toddler, who also steams, according to her. And when she asked him, what about the cheating allegations? Pure, deafening silence. Drew, the same man who had just spoken for nearly 10 minutes straight, suddenly lost his voice. His entire body language changed. He looked down, away from the camera. His hands fidgeted. His face tightened. Stephanie was left to speak, alone.
I address that he's not cheating on me. That stuff is ridiculous. And whenever he's out doing this gig work stuff, he'll answer the phone the first time I call. He will come home if I'm like, hey, I need you to come home. And he's back within whatever distance he's away from me. So there's none of this, like, there's just, whatever you guys are trolling, you're trolling there, because that's not going on here. And if we have to get detailed on that, I guess, sure, I'll spend my fucking time, but I don't think it's necessary, because we have better things to do with our fucking time.
From that moment on, the tone of the video shifted completely. You could feel the energy in the room drain the minute Stephanie took over the conversation. It was as though she suddenly realized she was no longer just part of the couple addressing the rumors. She had become the sole spokesperson for damage control. She claimed Drew always picks up her calls when he's working his gig jobs, no matter how busy he is. She painted a picture of reliability that Drew would drop anything to answer her call and come back to the motel if she needed him. To her, that was enough proof that he wasn't cheating. If I had the time, she added, I could break down every detail and show you all that this is just trolling. Her voice was firm, but her eyes looked tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from emotional exhaustion. But she didn't break anything down. And most importantly, Drew still said nothing. Not a word to support her, not a denial, not even a vague reassurance. He sat there, nodding lightly, barely meeting the camera. When he finally opened his mouth again, it was not to defend himself, it was to pivot. He shifted the conversation completely, addressing a different rumor that he wanted to reach 10,000 followers on TikTok so he could quit his job. That's not true, he said. I just want to build another income stream.
You're trying to get out of here.
Yeah, that's what our goal is.
I guess the other thing, since you're helping with this whole conversational thing, is people think that I want my account to get to 10K just so I can quit my job. No, I want that to get to 10K for I have that one more additional thing to use for income.
It was a strange moment, like watching someone change the subject in the middle of a fire. The house is burning, and instead of putting it out, Drew was busy talking about how he didn't want to quit his job. It was a complete and intentional pivot, calculated, cold, strategic. Because if he wasn't guilty, why not just say it? Why not look into the camera, address the side piece claims directly and say, I didn't do it? Why leave your partner to shoulder the weight of your defense while you choose to validate a lesser rumor? The avoidance was its own answer, and everyone watching felt it. Stephanie kept trying to reassure the audience, and maybe herself, that everything was fine. She repeated that Drew always responds to her calls, but that didn't line up with what she had previously said on her own lives, that she limits how much she contacts him while he's out working because he sometimes takes hours to respond. So which is it? And then there was her own definition of cheating, one she had repeated multiple times in the past with conviction. Stephanie had gone on record saying she believes a man watching explicit videos of other people, even in private, is already crossing a moral and emotional line. That for her, betrayal isn't just physical. It's anything that removes emotional or sexual intimacy from the relationship and places it somewhere else, especially without consent. So now, with Drew allegedly texting another woman, sending explicit messages, being flirtatious, emotionally available, and possibly even talking dirty while Stephanie is home taking care of their kids, how is this suddenly not cheating in her eyes? The contradiction is jarring. It's not just confusion. It's textbook cognitive dissonance. It's the mental gymnastics that people go through when the truth is too painful to confront. Stephanie is trying to hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time. That Drew is loyal and that these messages, screenshots, and receipts don't mean what they clearly show. She's bending her own rules to fit into a story that causes less pain, because accepting the truth would mean facing everything she's been tolerating and possibly losing the life she's clinging to. In reality, she's gaslighting herself. This isn't about convincing the public anymore. This is about her trying to make reality fit into a sober, more livable version, one that doesn't shatter her completely. What makes it even harder to watch is how Drew's silence continues to fill the room like a heavy, suffocating fog. It's not passive, it's pointed. His silence doesn't just speak, it screams. It says everything his lips refuse to say. It confirms what Stephanie is desperately trying to deny. And instead of acknowledging that silence for what it is, a confession in its own right, Stephanie doubles down. She builds more defenses. She adds more justifications. She tells herself that as long as he picks up her calls or comes home at night, then everything must be okay. But deep down, even she knows it's not. The woman running the Drew side piece page didn't slow down, not for a second. She seemed almost methodical in her approach, releasing more receipts each day like clockwork, screenshots, timestamps, old messages and photos, all carefully lined up to tell a story she insisted was true. But she didn't just share conversations. She got surgical. She spliced clips from the very live video where Stephanie was sitting next to Drew, defending him tooth and nail, and paired them with alleged private conversations between herself and Drew. In one particularly damning clip, a message allegedly from Drew admitted he preferred texting without doing gig work, because once he returned to the motel, Stephanie had a habit of going through his phone. That one statement alone changed the entire tone of the situation. It painted a picture of not just secrecy, but of strategy, of someone who knew what he was doing and how to get away with it. So now, we're not just dealing with vague, easily dismissed rumors. We're looking at a pattern, a breadcrumb trail of deception. This wasn't some random TikTok troll fishing for clout. This was calculated emotional betrayal backed up by receipts that were too specific to ignore. And Stephanie, still standing by him, still on camera, defending him like it was her job. She claimed physical cheating hadn't happened. She rationalized that maybe Drew never actually met this woman. Maybe it was all just words. just venting, just attention seeking. But the messages said otherwise. They were personal, intimate, unfiltered. Drew was allegedly calling this woman pet names, engaging in flirtatious banter, crossing every emotional boundary a committed man should never cross. Even if their bodies never met in person, their minds certainly did. And their words, explicit, suggestive, and undeniably inappropriate, left little room for innocence. This wasn't harmless. It wasn't accidental. It was emotional infidelity at best, and at worst, a complete premeditated betrayal of Stephanie's trust. And still, through it all, Drew refused to even say her name, not to confirm, not to deny, not to show accountability, nothing. Just silence. The tragic aftermath. This wasn't just a private crisis. It was public, messy, and deeply humiliating. Watching Stephanie defend Drew while he sat beside her in utter silence didn't just make viewers shift uncomfortably in their seats. It triggered a kind of emotional dismay that's hard to explain unless you've witnessed it yourself. It was painful, visceral, the type of moment where you want to look away, but you can't because it's unfolding in real time and it feels too important not to see. Stephanie sat there, doing verbal backflips, defending the very man who wouldn't even lift his head to speak. Her voice wavered with conviction and desperation. She was fighting a battle that only she showed up for. And Drew? He might as well have been a statue. No eye contact, no assuring touch, no verbal validation, just dead silence, like a void swallowing the entire conversation. It wasn't just awkward, it was soul-crushing to witness, especially for women watching who knew that feeling too well. The feeling of pouring everything you have into someone who refuses to meet you halfway, who lets you embarrass yourself trying to save a sinking ship they punched holes into. And that's exactly what this is. A moment of raw, second-hand embarrassment that lingered long after the video ended. Drew didn't deny the cheating. He didn't validate Stephanie. He didn't say he loved her. He didn't show any signs that their relationship meant enough to even defend. He didn't fight for her. He didn't even flinch. He said nothing. And that silence wasn't neutral. It wasn't passive. It was loud. It screamed apathy. It screamed guilt. And most of all, it screamed disrespect. Because sometimes the cruelest thing someone can do is make you do all the talking and then quietly watch you as you unravel on their behalf.
Another stepping stone that I have, a third or fourth income that I can use to better things, believe it or not. I'm not just going to straight up and be like, yeah, I quit, because I understand that. I never think I would be going back to grocery retail because it's been like 6 or 7 years, but it is what it is. It's something I know like the back of my head. And I walked into my old store, which was my first store that I started at, and there's probably 20 or 30 people that were still there when I left all those years ago that are still there. So it's kind of like I'm going back to like old work family. Mm-hmm. So, and they all know me and they know what kind of work I do, and they're like, oh, well, yeah, hey, yeah, we need you. Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be good for us, I think, and it's the only job I've consistently heard you bring back up throughout our relationship.
Is grocery retail.
That specific job.
Is grocery retail.
Yeah,
I worked in many stores. Yeah. I know many managers, and I've done fairly good work helping flip stores around. So.
Well, I meant the night.
Yeah, that's the whole thing of it. Mm-hmm. That's the whole thing of it. Yeah.
That was the job that I've heard you talk about. It was something you could do again. Mm-hmm. So I think it kind of works out perfectly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm going back to. I think, again, see, I'm about to get up. We can do a part 2 on this. I'm about done. This may or may not get posted. If you guys do see it, then it got posted. See you guys.
When a woman loses herself to a toxic partner, Stephanie's loyalty to Drew is difficult to watch. Not because loyalty is bad, but because it's been reduced to denial, self-erasure, and public humiliation. What might have once been love or trust has now deteriorated into something else entirely. Something sadder, heavier, and harder to witness. This is a woman who has been repeatedly, publicly humiliated by the very person she keeps showing up for. Let's not forget, this is the same man who slammed a door in her face during a live stream without hesitation. The same man who dumped their kids on her lap mid-broadcast because he couldn't handle parenting duties, forcing her to end her life in embarrassment. And now, with the weight of cheating allegations looming over their alleged fragile relationship, he won't even offer the basic respect of a denial. Not even a simple, "that's not true." And still, she stays. Still, she explains. Still, she rationalizes. Still, she protects. Still, she bends herself into impossible emotional shapes to make this look normal. Convince herself and everyone watching that this is just a rough patch, not a clear sign of a man who doesn't care. It's hard to measure what's left of Stephanie's self-esteem. What used to be a woman trying to keep her family together now looks more like a woman trying not to lose her entire identity. She's lost in this relationship, in Drew's chaos, in the ever-growing list of excuses she tells herself. She's performing the role of a loyal partner not because she's strong, but because she's afraid of what happens if she stops performing. And perhaps, the saddest part of all, she's not just trying to protect her relationship. She's trying to protect the illusion of stability, the illusion that everything is fine, that love still lives in that silence, even when it doesn't. So here's the question. Did Stephanie know all along and just try to hide it from us? Was she protecting Drew or protecting herself from the collapse of everything she built her identity around? Or is she truly so deep in denial that even Drew's silence, the loudest red flag of all, wasn't enough to wake her up? Has she become so used to rationalizing the disrespect that she doesn't even recognize it anymore? No matter the answer, this situation is painful to witness. It's not just about TikTok clout or messy gossip. This isn't internet drama. It's a very real unraveling of a woman who once had a voice, now drowning in silence, while the man beside her refuses to throw a lifeline. Stephanie didn't just defend Drew. She defended a fantasy, one where love means loyalty, even when that loyalty is one-sided. One where silence means innocence, even when it's dripping in guilt. One where the dream of a united family matters more than the reality of emotional abandonment. And most tragically, one where public humiliation, repeated, relentless, and televised, is still not enough to make her walk away. Because to leave would mean admitting she was wrong. It would mean confronting that all the effort, excuses, and sacrifices were for someone who never intended to meet her halfway. That's a heavy truth. And sometimes, denial feels safer than freedom. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Drew cheated? Or do you believe Stephanie really trusts him? Do you think she believes herself at this point? Tap like and subscribe to stay updated as this heartbreaking story continues to unfold, because unfortunately, it doesn't look like the end just yet.